All right, we're back now, and we've gone through all of the implicit trials, and now we're ready to move on. One thing I'll say about the implicit trials that I was mistaken on earlier, you may have picked up on this, instead of 15 trials in each set, there are 20 trials in each set. We increased that recently, so you may have picked up on that if you were counting the number of trials. All right, so we're done with the implicit trials in a survey, and we say, okay, that's it for your evaluations. We have just a few more questions for classification purposes. What you'll see now are the outcomes questions that we put into the survey earlier, as well as the demographics questions, and then we'll be finished. So here we go. Here was one of the outcomes questions. Approximately how many items or units of products or services from each of the following have you purchased in the past week? And I don't have them here, but you'll see them in the survey. Each of the logos or the representations of your SOIs will be here. So picture Jack in the Box, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Subway here. And I'm just going to put in numbers. So let's say I did 5, 6, and 3 for each of those. And then again, here is the constant sum question. We say assume you had $25 to spend on the products represented by the images below. Again, we don't have it here, but you'll see that the logos or the representations of your SOIs will be here. This should be KFC, and it should be Subway, and it should be Jack in the Box. We randomly order these so that they don't always show up in the same order. So these have to add up to 25, so I'll say 10, and I'll say 8, and I'll say, I think if I do my math right, that should be a 7. And when I do that, it should add up to 25. And again, we only had 2 outcome questions there, so we're done with those. And now we go on to the demographics questions. Male, I won't divulge my age. I'll say I'm 29. Why not? Select your outcome. I'm going to say something else there, and if you want to put in there, just say worker. The respondent will put in whatever applies. I'm going to say that I prefer not to answer the ethnic background question, which is definitely an option, and I prefer not to answer the income question, which is definitely an option. And that's it. Those are all the questions we have. Thank you very much for participating in this study. We really appreciate it. Click to end your survey. So they end the survey. I'm going to click off of that, and we go back to the preview survey page. To end up this part of our demo, I'll talk about the validation preview. In any study, we hold out or we assign 100 people to go through what's called the validation priming process. The validation primes are there to validate that the implicit and explicit processes are working, particularly the implicit processes. Instead of the SOI representations that you see for your targeted SOIs, in the validation prime surveys, the people see things that we already know what the responses should be. We have a cute little baby, we have somewhat of an ugly spider, and we have a cheeseburger, which kind of goes back and forth. But the baby and the spider are key. We know that for the baby, it's pretty universal that there are both positive implicit and positive explicit responses that we will get. For the spider, we know it's pretty universal that we should get both implicit and explicit negative responses. So at the back end, when we see these data, we want to make sure that we're getting what we should be getting for the implicit and explicit responses or their associations. And when we get that, we know that the surveys that use the actual SOIs that you as a client input are getting valid data. So that's what the validation preview is all about. When you're finished previewing your survey, you can go and make any changes that you want. And you'll see in my next video, I'm going to make some changes, and I'll explain that when I get to it. But for now, I'm going to submit this to say that we have completed the preview survey part of our study setup, and we're ready to move on.